Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Miles, and this is going to be an amazing PowerPoint presentation on colorism and trying to educate people about mixed race and what that means from an empirical point of view when it comes to research in the penal system, when it comes to access to housing, education, political incumbency, what else? In the penal system, when it comes to sentencing, protracted sentences versus truncated sentences, all those different things. And again, the video is not to cause any divisions or discomfiture with people. It's to educate you, because a lot of times, unfortunately, there is this rife on social media of misinformation where people take logical fallacies and add populisms and start spreading it as though it's truth. And because they're popular opinions, people think it's factual. Just because you have 1,000 or 1,000,000 likes on a post does not make it true. And then I noticed, I can't quantify the number, but I've noticed on social media, it seems to be like the misinformation team is winning over the factual team, like the team that actually comes to the table with the credentials, the empirical research findings, and the apodictic facts versus the people that come, to the table with lies, paralogy, sophistry, propaganda, all those different things. It seems like that team is on top because, again, a lot of times people like to believe things that align with their faulty narrative. So they're going to, of course, follow and support those ideals because that's what I want to believe. That's what I want to believe to be the truth, so I can feel better about myself, so I can sleep better at night and not worry about anxiety of being confronted by someone that's telling me you're wrong, and that person having the credentials, education, and research to back up what they're saying. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to run into that person. If I see them coming in the room, I'm going to run out the back door because I don't want them confronting me and correcting my faulty belief system with facts, because all of a sudden is all those things I've been saying on social media were false. What do I do with the videos and the posts? Do I delete them? Do I make a disclaimer? Do I correct myself, publicly correct? All these things that people don't want to do. So, to avoid all of that, they just run the other way. They try to absquatulate the scene, I call it, right? Run out the back door because they don't want to confront or be confronted by someone that's highly educated, that has actually done the research. And I tell people that even though research is not like a perfect instrument, right? But it has far more credibility than somebody that is just using open sources, right, to argue a point. I'm just saying, I would take research any day. Again, it's not perfect, just like our legal system. It's not a perfect system, but it's in place for a reason. And I still would always respect and defer to, our law or our legal system when it comes to justice, right? As opposed to people just arbitrarily just making up stuff, right? No, I rather defer to the legal system, just like research. I don't go by open sources. I go by research from scholarly sources that are peer reviewed. That's what I go by. People that have master degrees, doctorate degrees, professional degrees. And it's not that, saying that to look down on people that don't have those degrees, but you have to understand, you're not going to have, there are some foolish people that make this choice and at the end they suffer because of it, but I'm not going to have a doctor operate on me if he or she has no medical license, if they don't have a medical degree, a medical license, just like an attorney. I'm not going to have somebody represent me in court that has no JD, a Juris Doctor degree, and they have not passed the bar. They don't have their bar license number. I wouldn't do that. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to higher education, right? When it comes to academia. I'm not going to listen to someone that has no advanced degree or degrees in research. I'm not going to listen to a person like that. I'm going to listen to an individual that I know has a master's, a PhD, an EDD, what else? Any kind of, advanced degree supported by empirical research. I'm going to listen to that person. And when things are not within your purview, the smart thing to do is you sit back and listen, because you realize you're not conversant on that topic. You're not a maven on that topic. That's what smart people do. But then, you get these knuckleheads that just want to be right? These mumpsimus, what do you call it? Ipsodixitist people, or I should say ipsodistatistic people that just want to continue spreading lies, even in the face of facts that controvert and counter what they're saying. They'll still keep going. They still keep those lies going because they don't want to change their mindsets, their belief systems, their paradigmatic views, because that's what helps them sleep better at night. It helps them with their self-esteem, right? I'm just telling you, right? That's how some cats roll. And it'll keep this rife, of, ongoing false information, corrupting people's minds, and then they, at the same time, complain, oh, the system's keeping me back. Oh, I can't do this and that. No, you're keeping yourself back. You're choosing to be ignorant. You are willfully choosing to be ignorant, and I'm trying to educate you with facts, and you still want to give me a bunch of shit, is because deep down inside is you're very threatened and daunted by someone that actually has facts that they're bringing to the table. All right, so I'm going to begin this presentation. Now, this is not required in my Master in Legal Studies program because, as I mentioned before, for those that are following me in my page on social media, that I'm basically finished with my current semester at Purdue University Global. And I have 2 more classes, and then I'm done with my 3rd master's degree. I cannot believe I'm saying this. My 3rd master's, oh my God. Anyway, of course, there's a lot of work, but definitely worth it at the end. I learned so much about different laws, writs, rules, procedures, motions, primary and secondary sources of authority, family law, contract law, the foundations of law, like a whole bunch of different things. So thank you to Purdue University Global. Great institution, just like Grand Canyon University. I just graduated this January 2026 with my master's in criminal justice legal studies. Oh my God, that was a very tough program. I had my moments when I wanted to quit. I was like, no, I can't quit. I got to set a good example. But that was a very, very tough program. And then I also have a master's in education, school counseling from Niagara University. So as you can see, I'm pro-academia. Some people say academia. Academia, potato, tomato. Anyway, so I'm talking about colorism, and there might be some aspects of this presentation that will cover intersectionality and the dynamics of intersectionality. I gotta just see how things go, because I would say that this is more of an extemporaneous presentation. I really didn't plan any specific order. Like, I haven't really worked on the eutaxy of my presentation. So basically, I'm just gonna add as I go. This is why I say I don't really have my eutaxy in place here. I'm just going to add things as I go, because sometimes I work better that way for some reason. So anyway, this is to educate people, those that are misinformed by false information, incessant information that just doesn't end. Sometimes, and that's what incessant means, right? An ongoing thing without interruption. Sometimes people just like to spread this rife of misinformation because they have an agenda that they want to serve, or they don't want to accept the truth because it causes anxiety, maybe sometimes compunction. You never know. And sometimes people don't want to live by their sin ideases by making the right decisions and correcting the record. So people that are watching them, I'm talking about like these celebrities or these socialites that have a significant following, they don't want to correct the record because all of a sudden is going to question, well, what do I do with all those other videos that are all like false information? Like, do I delete them? Do I make a public disclaimer? Sometimes people just don't want to do it. They're lazy, right? So they exude acrasia, meaning that they know it's wrong to leave false information up, but they do it anyway, right? Well, I'm here to hopefully draw some attention to those cats, okay, with facts that are backed up by scholarly sources and also peer review. So, all right, let's talk about colorism and how it affects one group by exalting the privileged group while oppressing, suppressing, repressing, and oppressing another group, right? So let me go through that again. We're going to talk about how colorism, featureism, hairism, or you call it texturism, how it exalts one group, right? Pedestalizes, gives one group opportunities, socioeconomic opportunities, while oppressing, suppressing, repressing, and depressing the other group that deviate from the Eurocentric norm. That's a very real thing. And I always try to tell people is I don't come to the table unless I know my SHIT. No, that's how I operate. I come fully armed with facts. And in this particular presentation, I have over, and this is not hyperbole, I have over 600 research studies. So I'm talking like quantitative, qualitative, spatial, temporal, deductive, inductive, meta-analysis on colorism and how people of mixed ancestry. Now I'm talking about specifically African and European people, like descent people, and the reason why is because that's what I am. So not to say those other mixes don't exist, like Asian and white, Asian and black, Middle Eastern and Native American. Like, I understand there's other variables of mixed heritage, and I'm not ignoring all of you. I love you, my brothers and sisters. I love all people, but my point is, I'm not ignoring you, but I can only cover about so much because I don't want this to become like a 4-hour presentation. So I have to kind of keep it, short and sweet and to the point. But I'm just focusing on African and European descent people is because historically those two groups have been like the most polarized, right? So that's why I'm focusing on those specific groups of people. But it's not to say that other variables do not exist in terms of people's mixed ancestry. Okay? So colorism represents a significant but historically under-examined dimension of racial stratification within the black community. Although racism generally operates through distinctions between racial groups, colorism involves differential treatment based substantially upon skin tone and other phenotypical characteristics, producing hierarchies in which lighter-skinned individuals, which are usually mixed race, which could be first generation or multi-generational, meaning two parents that are biracial or two parents that are multi-generational mix, okay, that may receive preferential treatment, while darker-skinned, monoracially phenotypical people experience greater social, economic, institutional, and interpersonal disadvantages. Contemporary empirical scholarship increasingly demonstrates that colorism is not merely a matter of like individual preference or interpersonal prejudice, but rather skin tone stratification and how that may intersect with socioeconomic status, discrimination, psychological well-being, physical health, and institutional treatment. So let me give you an example. Research utilizing nationally representative and longitudinal data has identified relationships between skin tone, perceived discrimination, and health outcomes among Black Americans. A Monk's nationally representative study found that skin tone predicted multiple forms of perceived discrimination and that such discrimination was associated with depression and self-rated physical and mental health. More research, more recent research, I should say, likewise identifies significant relationships between skin tone and health inequities, including psychological distress and psychological outcomes. So the importance of empirical research in addressing colorism, therefore, lies in its capacity to distinguish documented patterns from anecdotal assertions, ideological assumptions, and individual perceptions. Rigorous research can identify the prevalence, causes, mechanisms, and consequences of colorism through methodologies, including nationally representative surveys, longitudinal studies, multivariate statistical analysis, qualitative research, and biological or clinical measurements. Such methodological rigor is particularly important because colorism may operate differently across gender, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, geographic location, and institutional environments. So, moreover, research examining African American and Caribbean Black populations, for example, has demonstrated that the relationship between skin tone and mental health is not uniform across Black populations, and also the underscoring that the importance of disaggregation or disaggregating data rather than treating the Black population as homogeneous or homogeneous. All right, so I'm going to begin this presentation. Now, this is not required in my Master in Legal Studies program because, as I mentioned before, for those that are following me in my page on social media, that I'm basically finished with my current semester at Purdue University Global, and I have 2 more classes, and then I'm done with my 3rd master's degree. I cannot believe I'm saying this. My 3rd master's, oh my God. Anyway, of course, there's a lot of work, but definitely worth it at the end. I learned so much about different laws, writs, rules, procedures, motions, primary and secondary sources of authority, family law, contract law, the foundations of law, like a whole bunch of different things. So thank you to Purdue University Global. Great institution, just like Grand Canyon University. I just graduated this January 2026 with my master's in criminal justice legal studies. Oh my God, that was a very tough program. I had my moments when I wanted to quit. I was like, no, I can't quit. I got to set a good example. But that was a very, very tough program. And then I also have a master's in education, school counseling from Niagara University. So as you can see, I'm pro-academia. Some people say academia. Academia, potato, tomato. Anyway, so I'm talking about colorism, and there might be some aspects of this presentation that will cover intersectionality and the dynamics of intersectionality. I got to see how things go, because I would say that this is more of an extemporaneous presentation. I really didn't plan any specific order. Like, I haven't really worked on the eutaxy of my presentation. So basically, I'm just going to add as I go. This is why I say I don't really have my eutaxy in place here. I'm just going to add things as I go, because sometimes I work better that way for some reason. So anyway, this is to educate people those that are misinformed by false information, incessant information that just doesn't end. Sometimes, and that's what incessant means, right? An ongoing thing without interruption. Sometimes people just like to spread this rife of misinformation because they have an agenda that they want to serve, or they don't want to accept the truth because it causes anxiety, maybe sometimes compunction. You never know. And sometimes people don't want to live by their sin ideases by making the right decisions and correcting the record. So people that are watching them, I'm talking about like these celebrities or these socialites that have a significant following, they don't want to correct the record because all of a sudden it's going to question, well, what do I do with all those other videos that are all like false information? Like, do I delete them? Do I make a public disclaimer? Sometimes people just don't want to do it. They're lazy, right? So they exude acrasia, meaning that they know it's wrong to leave false information up, but they do it anyway, right? Well, I'm here to hopefully draw some attention to those cats, okay, with facts that are backed up by scholarly sources and also peer review. So, all right, let's talk about colorism and how it affects one group by exalting the privileged group while oppressing, suppressing, repressing, and oppressing another group, right? So let me go through that again. We're going to talk about how colorism, featureism, hairism, or you call it texturism, how it exalts one group, right? Pedestalizes, gives one group opportunities, socioeconomic opportunities, while oppressing, suppressing, repressing, and depressing the other group that deviate from the Eurocentric norm. That's a very real thing. And I always try to tell people is I don't come to the table unless I know my SHIT. No, that's how I operate. I come fully armed with facts. And in this particular presentation, I have over, and this is not hyperbole, I have over 600 research studies, so from like quantitative, qualitative, spatial, temporal, deductive, inductive, meta-analysis on colorism and how people of mixed ancestry. Now, I'm talking about specifically African and European people, like descent people, and the reason why is because that's what I am. So, not to say those other mixes don't exist, like Asian and white, Asian and black, Middle Eastern and Native American. Like, I understand there's other variables of mixed heritage, and I'm not ignoring all of you. I love you, my brothers and sisters. I love all people, but my point is, I'm not ignoring you, but, I can only cover but so much because I don't want this to become like a 4-hour presentation. So I had to kind of keep it, short and sweet to the point. But I'm just focusing on African and European descent people is because historically, those two groups have been like the most polarized, right? So that's why I'm focusing on those specific groups of people. But it's not to say that other variables do not exist in terms of people's mixed ancestry. Okay? So colorism, all right. So let me pick up. Colorism is an important but historically under-examined form of racial stratification within the Black community, in which skin tone can influence social, economic, psychological, health, and institutional outcomes. Empirical research is essential, or sine qua non, because it distinguishes documented patterns of color-based discrimination from anecdotal claims and provides reliable evidence regarding its prevalence, causes and consequences. Professional organizations such as the American Bar Association, ABA, and American Medical Association, I guess you would say AMA, can evaluate research and provide expertise and policy recommendations, although their findings and policies do not themselves constitute law. So just make sure we're clear there. So under Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Congress's bicameral structure, consisting of the House of Representatives and the Senate, allows and or permits legislators to consider empirical evidence through hearings, testimony, committees, and legislative reports when developing statutory protections. So ultimately, scientifically, credible research can inform congressional decision-making and support the development of constitutionally appropriate laws addressing documented colorism and related disparities. So, as I move forward, I'm going to cover those aspects of colorism and all of the variegated influences that colorism has on people's lives, on their livelihood. It's very, very important. So this is why I try to educate people to not defer to false information coming from open sources. Open sources is not equivalent to scholarly sources. Open sources is just any old random information that people are picking up that somebody could have just cobbled up, right? With no empirical, facts to substantiate and corroborate what they're saying. Yes, those are open sources. You never want to rely on open sources because a lot of times they're riddled with lies and falsities. You go by scholarly sources. Now, of course, like any, instrument, it's not perfect, right? Research can be flawed in that sometimes the researchers themselves could harbor some implicit biases, sometimes explicit biases. You never know what's going on, right? Or sometimes people have an agenda they're trying to assuage, and they kind of structure their research to assuage that agenda. I understand that, right? Just like our legal system, right? I believe in a legal system. Is it flawed? Of course it's flawed. You sometimes have judges that exude parti pris. You have some attorneys that violate model rules of professional conduct, and judges that also violate the model code of judicial conduct. We have a lot of different things going on. I understand all that stuff. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not ignoring it. Nor am I denying it. I know all those things, those dynamics exist, unfortunately. However, we have to have some kind of system that we can rely on. So I'm going to choose the lesser of the two evils, if that makes any sense. All right, so I want to talk just briefly about research. And as I mentioned before, the research, I'm a huge proponent of it. It's not a perfect instrument, but again, nothing's really perfect. Our legal system's not perfect. Of course, there's flaws. There's always going to be flaws, right? But if I had to choose between research versus open sources, I'm going to go with the research, right? I'm not going to go by some bogus, made-up open sources, right? That are usually riddled with lies, undocumented facts, etc. So I go by scholarly sources, right? By people that have master's degrees, PhDs, etc. Higher education. And it's higher education for a reason. There's a reason why it's called higher education. Again, it's not to look down on anyone that doesn't have an advanced degree, but you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, just keep it 100%. You would not want somebody representing you in court. Now, there might be some exceptions, some foolish exceptions, but those individuals that are within reason, they're not going to have a person that's masquerading as an attorney represent them in court if that individual has not earned a JD degree, a Juris Doctor, and have passed the bar, right? And have their legal license or their bar license. No, they're not going to do it, right? Well, it's the same thing with when it comes to the medical field. You're not going to have somebody, operate on you, perform some kind of cosmetic surgery or life, saving surgery, whether it's a heart transplant or whatever, if they don't have a medical degree and a medical license. I mean, most people, now again, like I said, there's always going to be some exceptions to the rule, but overall, I feel that it's safe to say that most people are not going to, choose plan B, right? They're going to want someone that actually has the credentials, expertise, and experience to operate on them. Well, like anything in life, research has the plenary power to change our quality of life, how we navigate through life, right? And this is why I'm a huge proponent of it. I don't go by open sources. I don't go by people's anecdotal experiences. Not to say that it's not important, but you have to understand is when somebody's telling you or sharing their anecdotal experiences, you really have to, again, coming from a research background, right? You really have to take it for face value. Because you ever hear the old saying is, there are three sides to the story. There's your side, her side, and the truth, right? You've heard of that before, right? Well, there's a reason why people say that, okay, is because often, can't say absolutistically, but often people are going to share information that pedestalizes them, that makes them look like they're innocent, make them look like they are the good guy or gal, right? While throwing the other person under the bus. That's just naturally what people do, right? They don't want to air their dirty laundry, like how they contributed to the problem. They just want to, focus on what the other person was doing. So this is why I often take what I hear for face value, unless there's, cooperative, cogent, unsaleable, and dispositive proof that this actually happened. I'm just saying, right? Even with some of the things I share in social media about my experiences with my family, particularly my paternal family, right? Now, again, you have to still take it for face value, even though I know what I'm saying is true, but I don't want to, contradict myself and say, well, I take other people's opinions for face value and not my own. No, I'm in that pool too. Unless I have proof, you just have to take it for face value. But this is why I go by research, because research, it's approved by a research board, a committee, right? They use approved evaluative instruments to assess, right, when they conduct the research, and then they, of course, undergo a peer review. See, to me, that has credibility. You're in a cadre of other professionals on your level or sometimes higher, and they are reviewing your work for legitimacy, for validity, for reliability, all those different things. So this is why I love research, okay? So I just want to make that very, very, very clear. Alrighty, so there's this student here. Her name is Dominique Jackson. She earned her PsyD, and let me see what university it's from. It's from California School of Professional Psychology. So she earned her PsyD, and I was kind of sifting through all of her research, and there's literally over 600, you heard right, that's not hyperbole, over 600 quantitative, qualitative, spatial, temporal, deductive, inductive, meta-analysis research on colorism and how colorism and even intersectionality, meaning if it's a female versus a male, if it's a person that's indigent versus someone that's affluent, all these different dynamics, right? And how those characteristics can exalt one group and depress, suppress, repress, and oppress another group that does not approximate the Eurocentric ideal that we have been basically indoctrinated and conditioned to accept as the epitome of intelligence, beauty, all those different dynamics, right? And again, I'm not here to bash Europeans, because I'm half European, my mother was European, and my maternal family are European. They raised my brother and I, they loved us, they embraced us. So just don't get it twisted. I love all people. If they're good people, then we're kinfolk. If you're the polar opposite, I don't want anything to do with you. So I want to make that crystal clear. But we cannot pretend that white supremacy doesn't exist, because it does. And even if I wasn't biracial, it doesn't matter who the author here is or the speaker here is. We just have to just tell the truth. It does exist. Our country was unfortunately founded on racism, and it has affected us for centuries, unfortunately. Some people do believe it's getting better. I do believe it's getting better, and I'm not trying to be unrealistic here, but I do believe it's getting better. But there's still more work to do. But anyway, research has the power to affect our quality of life and how we navigate through the different, spaces and places in life, right? So this particular individual, Dominique Jackson, I was sifting through all of her research, and there's literally over 600. And you have to keep in mind is, when you read a research, right, that research alone also has references, a corpus of references about the topic or subject, whatever that they're discussing. Yes. So when I was going through them, like, oh my God, like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like past 600. I was shocked. And I'm like, wow. So 600 is a relatively like conservative number, a safe number, but I do believe it's probably like 700 or 800. If I were to guesstimate, and that's not a gross estimation. I believe it's around there, but just to kind of keep it safe, because I didn't go through every one of them because it's so voluminous, it's over 600 for sure. But how can someone come to the table with no research, no advanced degrees, and try to, argue, debate, and controvert somebody that comes in that's, well educated, have advanced degrees and research? I don't understand why somebody would foolishly think that they could like debate with somebody of that stature. Like, it's just foolish. It's kind of like, to me, analogous to a cat trying to fight a dog without claws. Like, why would you do that? But anyway, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the things that I noticed in her research when it talks about disparities among mixed race individuals and monoracially black people that appear to be, I'm talking about phenotypically, of West African descent, like that have, no evidence of mixture in their phenotype. I'm talking about light skin, loose texture, curly hair, light eyes, aquiline features, features that usually, are indicative of mixed ancestry. I'm talking about those individuals. And I want to say for the record is, I do understand that mixed race people still can face racism. I'm not saying they don't. I mean, I would be remiss to not address that. I understand that, yes, they definitely face racism, but is it at the level and degree as a black person? Absolutely not. And we're not talking about like, oh, it's a little like a scintilla of a difference here, very minute, no, or a modicum, no. In many cases, a substantial difference. So basically, to kind of sum things up with Miss Jackson in her dissertation, that I notice a common theme with a lot of the comparison analysis in her dissertation between mixed race people and black individuals, I'm talking about Americans, right? That mixed race people often had a huge advantage when it came to employment opportunities, a lot of corporate jobs. I'm talking about private sector, public sector. If they're going to hire a minority, they want someone that looks more like Eurocentric features or approximates whiteness. Or just, having lighter skin or features that, and I really hate to use this term or phraseology, that are safer, that are less threatening. And that's what's described in some of these research studies, is a lot of times people of mixed ancestry, which could be biracial, multigenerational mix, meaning two parents that are biracial, or two parents that are multigenerational mix. That's a very real thing for those that keep saying that's not true. That is 100% true. And if you doubt me, then look up the Blue Vein Society, okay? That'll answer all of your inquiries. But anyway, so according to these research studies, that mixed race people, that's both men and women, can sometimes have less education than a black person and still get hired before them. Isn't that crazy? When it comes to prison sentencing, you can have a mixed race, male or female, versus a black male and female that have the same crimes of turpitude, right? Like almost identical. And the mixed race person would receive between 15 and sometimes 25% less prison time. Can you believe that? Absolutely. And I'll leave all these research, references so you can, look up the studies yourself, because it's so voluminous I can't go through each one of them, because this presentation will turn into like a 6-hour, and I don't have time for that. But I'm just giving an example. Income disparities. There's been lots of studies, especially from Harvard University, that a mixed race male can earn the same income as a white male with the same education or similar education, similar background relative to a black male. There was a wage penalty just for being a dark-skinned and non-ambiguous black person. Yes. There are studies on it. I was shocked when I saw it. I wouldn't say I was shocked because I already know it exists, but it just confirmed what I already know. So I wouldn't say I was shocked. I'm going to take that back. But I was disappointed that this stuff still happens. What else they were talking about? So shorter prison sentences. Oh, let me give you another example. Remember Jeremy Meeks, they use the term hot felon. Remember, he was blasted all over social media, and he graced the covers of all these different magazines. He was in jail for violating, I believe, his terms and conditions of his parole or his probation. It was one of those two. I think it was probation. But anyway, he had a firearm, which, if you have a felony, that's a no-no, right? That's the quickest way to have your probation revoked. And for the courts to file a motion, or a prosecutor to file a motion to revoke, and that's the quickest way to have your tail sent back to prison, okay? Because you violated the terms and conditions of probation. They don't play around with that. That's why a motion of a motion to revoke is filed when you violate it. So they don't play. Anyway, so Jeremy Meeks, because of his light skin and his blue eyes, would you believe the judge? He was supposed to serve between 6 to 7 years in prison because of said violation with, having possession of a firearm, knowing that he's not supposed to do that. Would you believe the judge truncated his sentence and he only served half? While the other inmates, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I do remember seeing that the other inmates that were in his cabal did not receive the same treatment. Isn't that interesting? And they did not look like him, if you know what I mean. So that's just one small example. There are so many examples. And then in these research, they talk about access to fair housing, right? Because, we have the laws, the statutory law, the federal law on fair housing in 1968, right? Well, a person that's mixed race, these studies show that they have a greater chance, between 20 to 30%, and sometimes even higher, chance of getting in certain communities, gated communities, simply because they're closer to the white ideal. They don't scare people. They don't deviate the white norm. Yes, I was shocked when I saw it. Now that I was shocked with the percentages. I was like, wow. But, they talk about that. What else? When it comes to political incumbency, I'm not saying, we haven't had any, amazing political black figures. Of course we have. But these studies show, though, that when you're mixed race, you have a greater chance of being elected for office. Now, for example, think about Obama, biracial, light skin, right? First, they like to say the first black president, but in actuality, he was our first biracial precedent. Now, some people argue there were some other presidents that had one or two drops, but the one drop rule was never a law. It was a de facto practice, and thank God, we have to go by Jim Crow laws anymore, 3/5 of a human being, all that nonsense. With Loving versus Virginia in 1967, the one drop was basically outlawed, and there were some other cases that followed that historical case that also outlawed the one drop. So the one drop, is null and void. It's a moot point. I don't know why people keep bringing that up. I always tell people, let's, try to excise any remnants of that enslaved mind by reconditioning yourselves with, a clean, clear mind that Jim Crow was a bad thing. So why perpetuate it? Why support it? At the end of the day, those benefits are not trickling down to you. By claiming somebody that looks more Eurocentric, right, and thinking, oh, if I claim them, they're like me. No, unfortunately, that's not what the research shows. The research shows that whatever benefits that mixed race person has, it's not going to trickle down to you. I'm just keeping it real. So I don't see the benefit of claiming someone that looks absolutely nothing like you. I'm not saying you can't love them as your brother and sister. I think that's amazing. We need more of that. But to say that they are the same would be false. Just keeping it real. Would be false. I mean, it is false because biologically you're not really the same. You may have some similarities, but you're not the same. And then number two is your navigations through life are not going to be the same. So I don't know why people say that. It's quite foolish, actually. But anyway, so they talked about, where am I going with this? About political incumbency, right? Your chances of being elected for, high office. So think about it. Obama was president for 2 consecutive terms. That's 8 years, right? And then Kamala Harris. Now, she was our first biracial vice president. But are you noticing a pattern here? You may say, oh, it's only 2 people. But my point is we've never had a person of color. Again, I'm not even thinking about the one drop nonsense. But for the most part, we've had nothing but European males throughout the history of our presidency, right? So the first time we have 2 individuals of color, I find it quite interesting that they're both biracial and light-skinned. Now let that sink in. That just, to me, just aligns with this research that I'm about to share with all of you. So let me go through the pages, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm not going to offer any voice speaker notes or whatever on the subsequent slides. I just want you to look at them, okay? All right, hello. So this is slide 12, and I just want to make it crystal clear that I failed to mention, because there's so much to cover, and this is why I listed all of the references, scholarly sources, so you can kind of do the homework yourself, because it's very overwhelming, and I don't really have the time to go through each one. Just don't have the time. But all the references are there. And I believe it's slide 7. Well, this is slide 12. So let me see, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I believe it's slides. No, I lied. Slides 4 through 11. You can look at it yourself. I mean, look at the research, and I mean, you have to kind of sift through. But there's quite a bit. It's just too overwhelming. I cannot go through all that stuff. But what I wanted to mention too was there were some research studies. One in particular, at the time he was working on his PhD, but it's Dr. William Darity. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Dr. Darity was working on his PhD at the time, and he came across research well, in his research, he discovered that employers would often hire, I'm talking about, when I say mixed race, I'm talking about black and white mix, right? A mixed race person that has less education, less experience over a black person, especially a male, with a master's degree and experience, and still hire the mixed race person. Yeah, it was crazy. That's one that really sticks out to me, but there's a whole bunch of other ones, but that is one in particular I remember reading about years ago, but it didn't surprise me because I'm not going to mention a place, but I worked at a number of places, I should say, where the employer was very discriminatory. Like, I guess they didn't think I knew what was going on, but they would have like all of the Europeans and mixed race people working in the front, and all of the black individuals, and some whites too, but usually they were mostly blacks working in the back. Yes. And this is in, the 21st century. Can you believe it? I'm sure a lot of people would believe it because that's just how racism works. It works. It just doesn't end. It's an ongoing thing, which is really sad. A sempiternal disease that I consider a disease, a mental illness that people just cannot get over. Like, it's just like people are people. Like, why are you treating people differently? But that's how some folk are. It's like, you don't look like me, you don't sound like me, you don't smell like me, you don't taste like me. I know that's being maybe a little silly, but my point is that a lot of times folk, don't want to associate with individuals that they feel that are the polar opposite of who they are. They just don't. They want to be around people that look, smell, sound more like them. And I mean, a lot of the research supports that. But I've worked in a number of capacities where there was blatant colorism, texturism, and colorism to me not only describes skin tone, but also facial features, hair texture, eye color, bone structure. It's all those things that kind of fall under colorism. But I just remember working at several places where they didn't want a certain phenotype in the front. And I'm like, come on, guys. You don't think that I can see this or other people can see it, but they didn't care. They just still did it as long as you didn't bring it to their attention. So let me tell you real quick an experience that happened with me. I worked at a restaurant, and I'm just going to keep it real. It was Longhorn Steakhouse, and this is God's truth is what happened, okay? They had, at the time when I was working there, if I can recall, they had no black servers in the front, right? And there's one particular dishwasher, and I won't say his name just out of respect, okay? And he saw me one time because I was a server. Man, Miles, you have made a lot of money. And I think that night I made over $200. I made a lot of money. And I remember him saying to me, man, I wish I could wait at a table. I said, well, why don't you ask so-and-so, specific manager, and I'll train you. And you know what he says to me? He said, that's not possible. I was like, why? And then he did with his finger, his index finger, he started rubbing his skin. I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, I'm too dark. This is what he says to me. I'm too dark. And I was like, I didn't know how to really respond to it because it's not like at that time I was oblivious to colorism. But when he said it to me, I don't know what it was. I didn't really, maybe I was, I don't know, oblivious to it. I wasn't really paying attention until, of course, he drew attention to it. Then obviously I started thinking like, oh my God, there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. That's what it appears to be. Even though somebody would argue, so how can you prove it? I get that. But I'm talking about the appearance of it. It made a lot of sense because I'm like, he's right though. I don't see any black servers. The closest one would be me, and I'm biracial. I'm black and white. And he kept saying it to me, and I was like, so then, of course, I went to a specific manager, and I basically put him on notice. So for those that are watching this video that keep talking nonsense, saying, oh, a lot of mixed race people, you guys feel like you're superior. I don't know. No, some do, but don't put me in that category because I fight for injustice for all people. I want to make that crystal clear. So do your research before you start making, up nonsense. It's like saying that I'm better than my father. Why would I? No, I'm not better than my father. I take care of my father. even though sometimes he's not appreciative. That's a whole nother topic that's irrelevant to this PowerPoint presentation. But please stop the BS and start, and stop assuming stuff, because that's very irritating. Just because I'm talking about a topic which is true, that is backed up by empirical research, doesn't mean that, oh, I think I'm better. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I have to eat, go to the bathroom, and die the same like everyone else. So anyway, I had spoke to a specific manager, and I was like, listen, how come there's no black people in the front? That I'm the closest one, which I'm light skinned, and I'm biracial. And they're like, oh, this one manager, I'll never forget it. You know what he says to me? He's like, well, a lot of white people will be afraid of him coming to the table. This is what this manager said to me. Now, at the time, because I was going through some custody battles, I couldn't afford to lose my job, because if I would have reported him, then most likely they would find a way of firing me, because I was going to expose them, right? And people don't like to be exposed, so what they do is they get rid of you, right? But this particular manager, and he was white, he said that to me, and I was shocked. And I looked at him, and then I told another manager what he said, and all of a sudden, they miraculously make this individual a waiter. I walk in one day, I'm like, what is going on here? And I was asked to train him, because, I volunteered to, because would you believe at the time, a lot of the servers, won't say their names, but a lot of the white servers at the time didn't want to train them. So there was a lot of racism going on. Again, can't prove it, but it just, the appearance of it, right? The old saying is sometimes you can't describe something, but you'll know it when you see it. I'm telling you, it was definitely racism, but I can't prove it, but it just checked all the right boxes. I'll leave it to that. So I trained him. And I had this one family, I won't mention their name, because I had a lot of families that requested me. I would say most of them were white people that would always request for me to wait on them. We just had a good rapport or whatever. I had some black families too, but most of them were white. And we just bonded, and I bonded with all my customers, even the ones that to me didn't really deserve it, but I always try to be, very hospitable and treat all my guests the same. I didn't want to, treat them differently, even though I know that they were complainers, some of them, and they were terrible tippers. Some people, and it went across the board, some groups more than others. But the point is, I still try to be respectful and give the best service to, my capacity or my ability. So I went to another manager and told this manager what the other manager had said, and of course, this person was disappointed. Now, did he mean, was he authentic in his disappointment? I don't know, but Spirit tells me something else, but I'm just going to leave it to that. So, anyway, read between the lines. So, they make him a server, right? And I was like, I'll train him, whatever it's that. And I had this couple, excuse me, that requested for me to wait on them, because they're like one of my regulars, right? And I sent this server over that, that was promoted, the one that we're talking about, or that I'm talking about, to bring some water to the table, because I was like, in the weeds, and he was basically assisting me because I was training him. So I sent them over, and you should have saw the look on their faces. This white family that that requested me, I can see them, but they didn't see me because I was putting an order in, and I just wanted to make sure that this individual that I was training wouldn't dump any water on them or whatever, because sometimes people cannot balance a tray and they just drop stuff, whatever. So, I was looking more for those reasons, but the way they looked at this individual, they were turning beet red. You can tell they were not comfortable. Even though I didn't know them like that, they were regulars that requested me, but I didn't know them on a personal level. I didn't go to their house or anything. So I went over to them to greet them, and they're like, "You're waiting on us, right, Miles?" I was like, "Yes." Oh my God. Thank God, because this other guy came over, and I was like, I'm training him, and they just kind of paused and didn't know how to really respond. But again, because I'm a psychic medium, I'm not saying that I'm right all the time, but I still have a pretty good track record in terms of accuracy, that I knew that deep down inside is they were not comfortable with him because he's a black male. And they didn't say it, but I could read between the lines, and that's when it really hit me that the racism in this particular restaurant at the time was so salient that you can cut it with a knife. So let me tell you what happened. Ready? Now, I feel that based on the circumstances that they forced themselves to promote this person from the kitchen to the front. Like they were forced to do it. When I say forced, meaning I put them on notice. So when you're put on notice and you don't want that appearance that you're being racist to get around, right? Then you got to do something to save face, right? To protect yourself so people don't start questioning certain things. Within 3 to 4 days, this person was back in the kitchen cooking. And I walk in and say, dude, what are you doing? He's like, oh, the manager told me I can't be out there anymore. I was like, why? So, of course, I went to the managers and like, oh, well, you know, we put him back in the kitchen because he was getting all these complaints. Listen, I was training this person. And if he dumped water in somebody, I would tell the managers, like, yes, it did happen. All these bogus complaints, ladies and gentlemen, about this individual. He dumped water on me. And I'm just talking about what these BS complainers were writing on, like, I guess it's the, what do you call it, the Longhorn Steakhouse website. You know, you can leave, like, customer feedback, whatever. All these bogus complaints, and I know one was water, that he spilled water all over him, which was not true, because I would have known about it. I was training him, you know, so I knew that was a BS lie. And then there was something else, someone else said that he took forever. I'm like, where's this shit coming from? Where's all this bogus, made-up stories coming from? They're just cobbling up stuff that's not even true. Because if he did something wrong, I would tell the managers, listen, he's new, he's learning, and yes, he made a mistake. We all make mistakes. No, it was complete BS. Now, I can't prove this, but I believe either the managers did it themselves or had somebody that they know write in some bogus complaints, or it could be the servants that did it, that didn't want him out there, or it could have been a combination of both. I can't prove it, but it was just really bizarre to me that all of a sudden he'd get all these complaints that were not even, like, legitimate. They were not even credible. They were all bogus. Now, what bothered me about this whole situation was we had a serious problem of people stealing at this particular restaurant. There were certain servers, and they were Caucasian. They were stealing, and I'll tell you how they were doing it. They were taking coupons out of the newspaper, like a $3 or $4 coupon, whatever, and buying a whole bunch of newspapers and using those coupons to pay for, I found this out later on, to apply to guests that came in that paid in cash. They would use those coupons to lower the bill so they keep extra money, like inflate their tips. Yeah, and there's several of them that were doing this, and it was happening at quite a bit of, like, Longhorn Steakhouse restaurants. And some of the managers knew this was happening and still didn't fire them. Now, don't you find that interesting? Now, that is, to me, a terminating offense, right? But nope, still kept those servers, most of them. Now, there's one, I believe, I won't say her name, she was fired, but there were other ones that were doing it, okay? It was very obvious. And yet the managers still kept them in their positions, didn't fire them, didn't suspend them, didn't demote them. And then the person I was training, gets these bogus complaints that I told the managers that did not happen. They didn't want to hear any of that. Oh, well, we need them back in the kitchen because we're short-staffed. No, they were looking for a reason to remove him from the front. I'm just letting you know, this is a real thing that happened. I did post it on social media years ago, and some people that I worked with at the time confirmed that what I said was true. So this is not a made-up thing, ladies and gentlemen, but it actually happened. So, going back to this photo here, slide 12, this is my whole point, is that our original ancestors that were brought here from West Africa, various countries of West Africa, were not light-skinned. And so when people keep saying, oh, we come in all shades, that our ancestors came in all shades, no, they did not. I don't know where some of you folk are learning this from. I don't know if it's just denialism or this is what you want to believe because you don't like the features of the original Africans that were brought here, but they weren't light skinned. I'm just telling you right now. And for those that keep bringing up the Khoisan people and the Ibu people, there's research that shows that they have genetic markers that are indicative of mixed ancestry. Even if, like for example, the Khoisan people, they're one of the oldest groups, or probably the oldest group, but it still doesn't mean they didn't mix with other people. Like, even though they were considered to be an isolated group in Africa, but the genetic markers show that they have similarities between Southern Europeans, and I do believe the studies showed particularly Spaniards and Italians. But I'm just saying, like Khoisan people, when you start getting research that contradicts other research, then to me that's not, you can't use that as a reliable source, because one person's saying it's apples, the other one's saying it's oranges. So which one's right? Okay? So I have to go by what is consistent across the board, right? And then the Ibu people, now I have a lot of research that consistently show that they're multi-generational mixed race people, which would make sense. But for the most part, our ancestors, ladies and gentlemen, were not light skinned. So you need to snap out of that nonsense and that denialism, thinking that, we come in all colors. That is not true. The light skin comes from mixed ancestry. And I even have a video that's on Facebook, and many people have seen it, where professionals, scholars, for example, like the owner of African Ancestry DNA, Dr. Rick Kittles, who I really admire, and I follow him on Instagram. I'm not Instagram, excuse me, LinkedIn. Like, I follow him because I just think he's amazing. He's already talked about this stuff on a number of videos, that light skin comes from mixed ancestry. So it doesn't expire, ladies and gentlemen, like food, okay? Like, you could be either first generation biracial or multi-generational, meaning that you come from a whole list of mixed race ancestors that, if you dig deep enough, descend from biracial people. That's where usually where it starts, because biracial people have kids too, right? So since I'm biracial, I can have a child, which I wouldn't do now because I'm 55, but I can have a child with another biracial person. Our child or children would be second generation, or what you call multi-generational mix, because both of the parents are biracial. I don't know why some people don't understand that concept, because you can have a black person, not mixed, that's multi-generational black, right? Just like what you see here in this photo here. Now, of course, I didn't see their ancestry DNA, but there's consistency in the phenotype. So I'm gonna have to go by that. But you can be multi-generational white, you can be multi-generational black, and you can be multi-generational mixed. Why people cannot understand that concept? It's just a basic concept. It's nothing, there's no rocket science at all here. It's just very simple, to the point, very perspicuous, but some people make it abstract art for whatever reasons, I don't know. But these are the phenotypes that you see here on slide 12. They were not light skinned. So stop saying that you come in all colors, because that is not true. Mixed race black people come in all colors. Now that would be more of an accurate statement, yes, meaning that because you're mixed with other races, right? I prefer to say black-white mixed race come in all colors, but sometimes people will say black mixed race. Okay, so even if we went with that, okay, I don't have a problem with that. But the point is, they come in all colors because they have European or other ethnic groups mixed in their gene pool. So that's not the same as our original ancestors. They did not come in variegated colors. I mean, you guys need to stop lying to yourselves. Like, honestly, you're making a complete fool out of yourselves. And I'll tell you something else too, besides the silky hair coming from mixed ancestry, even the light eyes. Light eyes is not a physical trait that is part of the African diaspora. No, it's not. If you see light eyes, that usually means the following. Okay, and I already did a video on this. I'm not going to, rehash this, but I have a video that doctors are talking about this, okay, MDs. If you have a black person, I'm talking about non-mixed, that has blue eyes, that's not a normal trait in the African diaspora. I'm talking about subsaharan. Now, the blue eyes usually comes from one of the following. Waardenburg syndrome, which the hypercolorized blue eyes is one of the main characteristics, or there's a subvariant known as heterochromia iridum, which is a brown and a blue eye, and then heterochromia iridis, where you have two brown eyes with blue pigments in it, and the reversal. Two brown eyes with blue pigments in it, or the reversal, two blue eyes with brown pigments in it. Yes, so that's Waardenburg syndrome heterochromia. And it's very high, I should say disproportionately high, in West Africa, and a lot of researchers don't know why. Some speculate maybe it has something to do with the food quality, the water quality, the weather, mutagens. They're not for sure like what specific factor. Could be a gallimaufry of factors, but it's known to be a multi-generational syndrome, okay, meaning passed down from one generation to the next or to the posterity, okay, for several generations. And the other one is oculocutaneous albinism, which is 4 different types. It's one of those two. Now, there's another syndrome. I think it's called Wallenberg. It sounds like Waardenburg, but it's a little bit different. I think it's called Wallenberg, but don't quote me on that one. I have to do more research on it. That's another syndrome that I noticed that they may have like hypopigmentation, a blonde forelock on the hair, that kind of thing, which is kind of similar to Waardenburg syndrome. I think it's called Wallenberg. It sounds similar, but anyway, I don't want to say for sure because I just forgot about that one. But my point is, those are usually the conditions. Now, there's another thing known as atavism, where you can inherit physical traits from an antediluvian ancestor or progenitor or progenitors, plural, from many, many, many years ago. Yet that's known as atavism. It's very rare, but we cannot exclude it from the equation. Okay? So, this is the phenotype of our ancestors. They were not light-skinned. So for those that keep saying it, you're in denial and you're extremely ignorant. I know that you don't want to, some of you, I believe that don't want to accept these features because you're not proud of them, because your own internalized self-hate due to racism, because that's what racism does, right? It causes divisions and, mental health issues within people. So that's why racism is, to me, a cancer. There's nothing good that ever comes out of it. So this is slide 13. I think one of the problems with ignorant, narrow-minded people that are just too lazy to read is a lot of times people just want to believe in things due to logical fallacies and populisms because it's easier. I don't have to read. I don't have to do any work. I'm just going to believe what I'm reading because it's easier for me to have someone else do the work, even if it's incorrect, as opposed to me researching the information myself. So a lot of times you'll see folk on social media, they just repeat stuff. It's almost like they parrot things that they hear without actually doing the research to see, is this really true? Like, who has the qualifications to say the apple is red? I'm just giving an example. The apple's red. The orange is orange, The banana is yellow. I mean, who has the authority to say that's correct? A lot of times, these listeners don't do the research themselves. They just believe whatever they hear, and that becomes truth, and in fact, it's not. And then when you have a person like myself that presents facts, they get very, very defensive. Sometimes they get the little panties in a bunch, because they don't like to be wrong. And it just shows that they're more interested in saving face as opposed to setting the record straight. Obama is our first biracial president, as I mentioned earlier, right? He's black and he's white. You can't dismiss one parent. Highlight one parent and dismiss the other. That's not how that works. Even if you have a bad relationship with that parent, at the end of the day, both of those people are responsible for your creation. Both of those people are what brought you in this world. So when I look at Obama's father and Obama, I mean, I'm sorry, I have pretty good, you know, um, eyesight. I have visual acuity. I can see that he looks very different from his father. And in fact, if you look at Obama, because they say that boys usually look more like the mothers and girls like the fathers. Now, there are exceptions, but usually that's kind of how it works for some reason. But if you look at Obama and his mother, he looks more like his mother. And even his maternal grandfather, which would make sense because that means the mother most likely looked like her father, right? So in Obama's case, he looks more like his mother and his maternal grandfather. I remember seeing the photos when they were on the beach. He looks just like his grandfather. But Obama, you can tell right away when he's next to his father. Now, I don't know if his father was a nice person or not. I don't know much about him. I just know one thing, that he really wasn't in Obama's life. But the point is, that's another topic. That's irrelevant to this presentation. Obama definitely looks biracial when he's standing next to his father. I mean, you can see the difference. It's not just the skin tone, his facial features. It's just his bone structure. He definitely looks different. He looks like a combination of both of his parents, but I would say more like his mother, okay? But I don't understand why this is like rocket science for some of you cats. Like, you know, the one-drop rule was never a law. It was a de facto. It was a de facto practice, right? Loving versus Virginia in 1967, a historical Supreme Court case, outlawed miscegenation laws and also the one drop. And then there's subsequent cases very similar that also reinforce the obliteration of the one drop. And some of you have enslaved minds as both white and black that still support that shit. Like, why would you do that? That's like Jim Crow. That's so insulting. Why would you support an old abrogated Jim Crow law? Like, why? Why would you do that? That's insulting. You're basically saying, "Oh, I believe in slavery. I accept anything that came from slavery." That's what you're basically saying. Because the 3/5 of a human being, that was probably even worse than the one drop. And yet, some of you cats have an enslaved mind that you just cannot shake. It's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like you're ensorcelled by old Jim Crow laws. Like you're under this spell. Like you're charmed by it in some kind of way. It was not a charming thing. Like, break the chains. Like, seriously. Like, slavery's over. That's in the past. I mean, it happened, but we don't need to dwell on that. We've moved past that. But Obama is the first biracial president. Now, Kamala Harris, same thing, first biracial president. She always identified as South Asian until all of a sudden when she wanted to become president, then it changed because she wanted the black vote. See, that's why I don't respect her. Listen, you're black and you're South Asian. But even though her father obviously had some mixed ancestry, I don't know what percentages. He wasn't 100% sub-Saharan African, obviously, if you look at the photos that I sent you. But just to keep it simple, she's West African and South Asian. I don't see how you can't just be proud of who you are without pandering to get people's votes. If somebody's not voting for you because you're biracial and you identify as such, then that just, to me, says a lot about their character. Like, I don't even want your vote. If that's the case, if you're going to be superficial like that, oh, because I don't identify solely as your race, you're feeling rejected, feeling insecure, and now you're not going to vote for me, what kind of crap is that? Now, I understand that some people vote for their own reasons. Sometimes they do it for political reasons, for racial reasons. You never know what people are doing, right? It's their right. It's their inalienable right. And if they want to vote for whatever reasons, that's on them. But I'm just making a point is I don't understand why some of you individuals act like you have visual acuity for everything else, but when it comes to people, you don't see it. How do you not see it? He looks very different from his father. Like, completely different features. It just blows my mind. Like, seriously, like, just how ignorant some folk are. It's like, why don't you pick up a book and learn something about biracial people? You act like we don't have a voice. We have a voice just like everybody else. And it's really sad because a lot of individuals don't have the resources, they don't have the language skills, they don't have the oratory skills, and yet they kind of become diffident on this topic because they don't know how to respond. They don't usually feel comfortable enough to let people know how they feel. But this is where I come in because I'm very confident in being biracial. I'm very proud of my dual heritages. And I'm, of course, highly educated, so I can hold my own. I can stand my ground. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't fit that category, or they're not in that category. So therefore, they just kind of defer to or go along with whatever people tell them because they don't, unfortunately, have the skills, the language, to express how they really feel. But I do, and I'm going to let you know, we are biracial, and we're very proud of that. And if you don't like it, whose problem is that? It's not mine. That's your problem. That's something you got to deal with. But you can't go and tell somebody that one of their parents don't exist. Can I do that to you? It's like me telling you, you love both of your parents? Yeah, Richard, I do. Well, guess what? Your dad doesn't count, only your mother. I don't think you're going to be happy about that. Well, why do you do that to biracial people? It's like, that shows me the selfishness that comes out, right? Which, again, says a lot about your character. And people like that, I wouldn't want to be your friend. I don't want you anywhere around me. Why is it okay for you to tell other people that one of their heritages do not count, but we can't do it to you? So if you don't want me doing it to you, then don't do that shit to me. That's how that works. And please stop saying the world and society, because there's over 8 billion people on the planet. I say this all the time. I want you to think before you speak. There's over 8 billion people on this planet. Unless you have an evaluative instrument that has assessed and questioned over 8 billion people on this planet on how they view mixed race people, you're not qualified to make that comment. Now, I understand that you're exercising your First Amendment right, because, we do have the Constitution, right? Supreme law of the land that falls under Article 6, right, of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause. So I understand that, it is your constitutional right, freedom of speech, but you're just making a fool out of yourself when you say the world, because I haven't received your questionnaire in the mail. My dad has not received your questionnaire in the mail. Where are you getting these facts from? Just pulling that out of your ASS? Like, you just sound absolutely unhinged. Like, even if you don't have a degree, at least show that you have some kind of, like, even a scintilla of reasoning, like a scintilla of education, a scintilla of intelligence. Like, who makes comments like that? Only an uneducated, gormless, unhinged person would say something like that. All right, so this is slide 14, and I just want to address something that I read a lot on social media, and again, the ignorance is just, I don't know, it's so disappointing, it's cringy, and quite concerning, actually, because it's a major disservice to people that are actually trying to learn something and better themselves and grow, and you're just doing the polar opposite. You're corrupting their minds, you're corrupting their cognitions, you're vitiating their ability to think effectively, to problem solve effectively, to use deductive reasoning effectively. You're not helping at all. You're causing a lot of harm, actually. But I want to talk about Waardenburg syndrome because it's, to me, an esoteric syndrome that's not known by the general population, or the general population. It's not exoteric like cancer, right? Cancer, for the most part, most people know what that is, right? They may not know all the little particulars of it, but they know that cancer, the bad cancer cells are eating the good cancer cells, right? And sometimes that can lead to death or, serious health complications. People usually know what cancer is. So that's considered to be an exoteric disease, right? Heart disease, also exoteric. That's something that's commonly known by the public. But esoteric is known by a specialized group of people, right? Something that, for example, if we're talking about, I don't know, astronomy, well, there might be things in that discipline that are just esoterically known by people that are in that profession, right? Well, Waardenburg syndrome is considered to be an esoteric syndrome. A lot of people don't know about it, but it is disproportionately high in West Africa, and a lot of researchers don't know specifically why. Some say, according to the research that I came across, could have something to do with mutagens, like environment, food, water, the quality of water. They're not really sure, right? It could be a gallimaufry of things. But it tends to be multi-generational. So, for example, if your mother or father has it, usually the kids, if they decide to have children, are going to inherit it. So it's known to be a multi-generational syndrome passed from generation to the next, or posterity. Now, when I say posterity, I'm not talking about the anterior and the posterity of a person's body when they're standing in an anatomical position. I'm not talking about that. Posterity also means progeny, means future generations. Knowledge is power, right? Anyway, so with Waardenburg syndrome, all groups across the world can have this syndrome. However, it is disproportionately higher in West Africa versus other regions of the world. And a lot of researchers and scientists don't know why. But some of the symptoms of Waardenburg syndrome are the following. Hypercolorized blue eyes that you see here on this slide. Heterochromia iridum, which at the top, if you look at the young man, I don't know if there's some green, I don't know if that's a mask he's wearing, some fabric, I'm not sure what that is. But you see the brown and the blue eye? That's heterochromia iridum. Heterochromia iridis is when you have two blue eyes with brown pigments in it, and then the reversal, two brown eyes with blue pigments. Okay, that's heterochromia iridis. Okay, iridis and iridum, right? Sometimes they have the blonde forelock, which is like a white patch in the frontal lobe. So see here the children with the blonde. Now there's one that's next to this beautiful African child in the middle. I don't know if he's East Indian. I don't know what his ethnicity is. But see, he has a hypercolorized blue eyes and the blonde forelock. And then the little girl, looks like a little girl, has heterochromia iridum. Not iridis, iridum. Okay? And then, let's see. Okay, well, all right, so let me talk about some more things. People with Waardenburg syndrome tend to have neurological issues. They're usually neurodivergent. They have like hearing loss, sometimes vision issues, but the big one is hearing loss. So a lot of times people with Waardenburg syndrome have, they would be deaf in either one ear or both, okay? And then, as I mentioned before, they have the white blonde forelock. I'm just basing it off of my memory here. And then sometimes they have like a wide set, like inner corners of their eyes. What was it called? I think it was called, give me a second. I'm trying to test my fallible memory here. Dystopia, I think it's called dystopia catherum. I think that's right. I believe that's right. I have to research it again. I forgot, but I do believe that's what it's called. And then they have another thing. I remember this was the hypoplastic or hypoplastic nasal root, right? And also sometimes a medial flare that's kind of like centered around the eyebrows in that area. But the point is, it's a syndrome that has nothing to do with, oh, see, we can normally have blue eyes. That is not true. I'm talking about subsaharan people. They don't have blue eyes. That's not part of the genetic markers. And doctors and anthropologists have already debunked that, and people still keep saying it. Like, it's like, guys, like, can you just stop the BS? Like, the logical fallacies and the adipopulisms? Like, just stop sounding ignorant. When people perpetuate ignorance, all you're doing is just perpetuating stereotypes. And I'm so against stereotypes. I like to defy stereotypes by showing a good example that, listen, I'm not like that. Like, I'm actually educated, I'm not ignorant, and I don't devolve to ignorance because I actually read. But some of these cats just have no shame in their game. Like, they just continue and perpetuate the blatant ignorance. And I'll tell you right now, it just sets people of color backward instead of forward. Just keeping it real. Okay? But anyway, so those are, and there's some other characteristics of Waardenburg syndrome. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link under these references of my YouTube video that you can watch. Or, I'm not YouTube. Yeah, it is on YouTube. It's on YouTube and it's on Facebook. So maybe I'll just have both of them on there just so you can check it out. But you can hear the doctor. His name is Dr. Bolin. He talks about that black sub-Saharan people do not have blue eyes. That's not normal. It's natural in that it's, part of their body. They are born with it, but it's not, or it just is congenital in some of these cases, meaning they were born with it, right? But it's not normal though. So normal and natural are not synonymous. I'm just telling you, they're not synonymous, okay? But anyway, so I'm going to post those links of my video talking about Waardenburg syndrome and oculocutaneous albinism, and you can watch it for yourself, okay? Okay, so this is one of my favorite grifters / charlatans, Ricardo Ignazio, right? He may consider himself a socialite. I consider him a grifter / charlatan. So he interviews a lot of people about race, right? And listen, I want to say for the record is I really admire and respect anyone that has limited education, meaning they don't have a degree. I respect anyone with limited education that puts forth the effort to research, to learn about the subject matter that they are presenting to their followers. I respect anyone that does it because it's nice to see it. I mean, you can still be educated without a degree, right? And there are a lot of people that are educated and don't even know how to tie their laces. So I get all that stuff, right? All the different nuances and the variables, right? So I just want to be clear that I respect the fact that he appears to be an individual that wants to seek justice for disenfranchised, marginalized groups of people. I like that about him. See, I'm being fair. I'm not just being, a negative Neil. I like the fact that he is trying to, I believe he is, trying to educate people about what the rights are and to not defer to white supremacy. And as I mentioned before I'm not talking about the good white people. I'm talking about the ones that believe in, perpetuating discrimination, racism through institutionalized practices. I'm talking about those folk, right? Because again, I'm half white and very proud. My grandmother, she passed away. She was German. I was extremely close to my grandmother. She loved my brother and I, helped to raise my brother and I'm forever grateful to my grandmother. So I just want to make that clear is I'm talking about the ones, not my grandmother, I'm talking about the individuals that believe and practice racism, and the ones that use their power, their money, connections to keep certain people out while, furthering their agendas, whatever agendas they are. I'm talking about those individuals, right? I don't identify with them. I don't claim them. I don't exalt them. I don't extol them. I want nothing to do with those people. So I want to make that crystal clear. So I like the fact that Ricardo is, bringing awareness to colorism and how white supremacy has basically crippled a lot of people of color, their minds. I understand all that, but what I don't like about Ricardo is that he doesn't do, he doesn't complete the job. He doesn't fully research topics the proper way through scholarly sources, not open sources, scholarly sources, and then bring the data or the resultant outcome of those studies to his platform and discuss it. He doesn't do that. He just spreads a bunch of canards, a bunch of malarkey, a bunch of nonsense. This is what I don't like about him. And when you try to educate him, he's more interested in being right instead of listening to someone that's far more educated than him, that actually has a research and a credentials. He doesn't want to listen to people like me. He'd just rather just, live this lie, this charade of, claiming to be an expert. I call it an ersatz expert, meaning a fake expert. And then it gets mad and blocks you when you come onto his platform as an educator, like myself. He has a problem with that. Then I get blocked. Because instead of using the opportunity to educate himself, he just prefers to block me because he doesn't like the fact that I'm going to challenge him on some things, right? And that means if his viewers or listeners, followers, see that he's actually been lying about things, all of a sudden he can lose a lot of followers, right? Think about it. So he's doing it to basically save face. And also, excuse me, he would either have to release a disclaimer that, hey, listen, I made some comments on these videos and they were actually incorrect. He's not going to do that. I don't see that he's that kind of person. I don't see he's that type of person that would exhibit, or what's the word I'm looking for, practice any type of syneidesis, which means knowing right from wrong, like your moral awareness. I don't see him exuding syneidesis. I don't see him doing it. I see him devolving to acrasia, meaning that he knows it's wrong, but he's still going to do it anyway. I totally see him doing that. He's one of those cats, and I've unfortunately interacted with people like him that they don't want to be wrong. They want to save face. They don't want to be an adult and say, you know what, I stand corrected. Instead, they want to continue the charade and deceive their viewers and thinking it's okay. It just shows that, excuse me, people like him are very selfish, because if you really cared about your viewers, don't you want them to know facts instead of fiction? Well, I know I would. Well, anyway, so he had this young man on his podcast, or whatever you want to call it, and it says, my mother is black and white. What does it say? Wait, my mother is black and father is white. And if you look at the slide here, look at Ricardo's profile photo, right? It's the photo that's directly underneath it. So he's wearing, I don't know, there's like a red in the background. I don't know if he's wearing like a red bandana or if there's like a red seat cover in his car. I'm not sure. But you can see the photo. That's the one. That's the interview. So watch it. If you go to his page, not that I'm trying to draw traffic to his page. I don't want to do that. But if you want to see the interview, I would definitely watch it. So this young man's trying to educate him. It's like, listen, sometimes I'm seen as black. Other times I'm seen as mixed race, or people don't know. And he would be actually right, because when you look at the features of our original ancestors, they don't look anything like that young man. So he was right. The young man, the 22-year-old, you know what Ricardo says? Again, because he doesn't like to be challenged by someone that's far more educated and talented than him. And this young man is 22 years old, and I'm sorry, when I watch the interview, that young man put him to shame. Now, of course, a lot of his listeners are not going to agree with me because they want to believe what Ricardo was saying, because a lot of those listeners are dealing with their own insecurities, right? And so they're going to support someone that aligns with their faulty belief system so they can feel better about themselves. But that young man is very precocious for his age. I was very impressed with how he handled himself. And Ricardo was just trying to, basically like mock him and just, and you would have to see the interview and you'll see what I'm talking about. Like mock him, little stupid smirks on his face, whatever. But in actuality, that young man was correct, okay? So Ricardo kept saying, oh, well, society, they're going to see him as a light-skinned black man. And I'm like, society, first of all, Ricardo, where's your proof? We have over 8 billion people on the planet. We all make up society. Are you talking about a secret society? Like, you sound absolutely ridiculous. There's over 8 billion people on the planet. My question is, have you sent that questionnaire to me and my father? Because I haven't received it. And my father lives with me, he hasn't received it either. So where are you getting your facts from? You're just making up shit and that, and think that, oh, it's okay, and it's not okay. And you need to be confronted and challenged on it, and that's exactly what I'm doing. That is not true. In fact, I have over 600 research studies, which I showed you here in this presentation, show that what you said is not true. And those are not just white passing mixed race people, it's just mixed race in general. If you have the light skin and certain features, you're not still seen and treated the same as someone that looks like my father. And that's just a fact. How are you going to controvert and debate and counter over 600 research studies? You got to be the biggest fool in the world. I'm not talking about 6 studies. I'm not talking about 60. I'm talking about 600, over 600. Scholarly sources, Ricardo, if you don't know what that means, and peer reviewed. So what are you talking about? So, anyway, I sent some information to Ricardo a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and you think that he would like publicly say, I stand corrected, I just learned something new. No, he just wants to remain ignorant because he doesn't want to admit that he's wrong. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, you'll deal with people like that. I start to wonder if that's coming from a dark spirit, because as a psychic medium, one thing I definitely know is one trait that is quite common and consistent across the board is when a person never wants to be wrong, that's usually indicative of a dark spirit. I don't care what they, try to present to the community. Oh, I'm doing all these philanthropic things. I'm trying to help humanity. A lot of times it's just a front. It's just a cover up, right? Because a lot of times they use that to cover up or occult what the dark side or occult who they really are inside. I'm just saying, right? Well, I don't have any respect for him. I think he's a compulsive liar. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And even Stevie Wonder can see, if you look at this young man versus a black sub-Saharan African with no admixture, they don't look anything alike. They look completely different. So I don't know why he's acting like he doesn't have visual acuity. I mean, really? I mean, if you're a person that has visual acuity, and it's visual, auditory, and cognitive, you would know with all your senses that that young man definitely looks mixed race. Now, I will admit with myself, I didn't know if he was black and white. I wasn't sure what the actual mixture was, but I can tell that he's black and something else. But when Ricardo's like, oh no, someone's just going to see you as black. Really? And if those people do, they're just ignorant like you. That just shows that they don't know their history. Our enslaved African ancestors never came here looking like that young man. Not even by a long shot, sir. And if you look at my slides, I have photos just to refresh in your memory. He doesn't look like a full black person, so why are you saying stuff that are not true? Like, it's just so cringy. But anyway, I just want to show all of you that watching his cringy video inspired me. He's one of the people, on top of all these other ignorant, gormless people that think like him, to make this video. Alright, so, oh my God, I'm really enjoying this presentation, because I'll tell you, it feels amazing to be educated. And I say that with pride. Just the confidence I have when I'm having a dialogical exchange, a polemical exchange with a person, topics that are highly controversial, the confidence I have is like through the roof. Is because I know I did the work. I did the research, my due diligence, to make sure when I come, to the table, or if I am inducted in a debate, then I can hold my own because I've done the research. I can usually tell when a person hasn't done their research. Just listen to the way they talk. Just listen to their faceticism. Faceticism is P-S-C-I-T-T-A-C-I-S-M. Faceticism is when a person says things that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't even know what it means, what they're saying. Well, I just love when I'm talking to people that their faceticism is just so salient. It's like you can literally cut it with a knife. That's how thick it is. That's how obvious it is. But I just love the confidence that I have when I have a discussion with people, because all the years of research, reading, my degrees, certifications, thank you. It paid off, because I just love, I would have been a good attorney too, because I just love a good debate, but I just love putting these clowns to shame. It's, I don't know what it is. It's kind of euphoric for me, because just the stupid looks on their faces. When I get done with them, all of a sudden they either block me, hurl epithets, typical stuff, right? Prevaricate, deflect, project, just the gaslight, just the typical defense mechanisms when they know that I sunk their canoes. And I don't mean ships, I mean canoes in their puddles. But anyway, myelodysplastic syndrome, right? I have the references there, scholarly sources. You can read it yourself, and I even included the 2 YouTube videos that are depicted on this particular slide. So it's just to kind of sum it up or simplify it. It's a bone marrow disease. Like the bone marrow does not produce enough red blood cells, and it can devolve to leukemia, right? Well, did you know that biracial people, ladies and gentlemen, and also multi-generational mixed race people, meaning 2 parents that are biracial or multi-generational mixed, cannot accept bone marrow from a donor unless that donor is of the same mix as the person that has MDS. Yes, it's the truth. Now, there's different types of donors. You can have an autologous donor, meaning it comes from the person, him or herself. Then you have a syngeneic, a syngeneic, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Syngeneic donor, which means it could be a twin sibling that can donate to you, right? So there's autologous, syngeneic, which can be an identical twin as a donor, and there's another term known as allogenic, right? Where it could be a friend, a cousin, a stranger, basically, as long as they are the same mix. Now, obviously, a monoracial person will be considered to be xenogenic, meaning foreign. That person would not be able to be a donor. But anyway, I just want you to know that if biracial people were black because of the dominant gene, then that shouldn't be a problem. If I thank God I don't have it, but if I had MDS, then I should be able to accept bone marrow from a black person. It wouldn't be a problem, right? Well, it is. It has to be the donor and the donee have to be of the same mix. So I want to make sure that we're all clear here. And in case you need the receipts, you see the slide here, all the evidence is right there. You can read the research yourself and watch the videos. These videos both talk about it. There are medical professionals that talk about the need of more mixed race bone marrow campaigns to, draw awareness to this, because a lot of doctors, they're still learning that mixed race people have different tissue type. You see the power of knowledge? So tell me how they are one thing when they're not. Ugh. It's so frustrating. To me, trying to teach somebody like from an ABCDarian level is exhausting. It really is. It's like starting all over from first grade or kindergarten. Who wants to do that? Who has the time and energy? A grown-ass person that doesn't want to learn, right? And they just want to continue these lies. I don't have the energy to do it. I don't know, maybe my age is catching up to me, but I don't have the energy to start over with some of these cats and teach them from scratch. Like, it's like building a house from scratch. I don't have time for that. But it's like, can you read a book instead of just being lazy and ignorant and just thinking that, oh, it's your way or the highway, you're not right. Myelodysplastic syndrome is a real thing. Unfortunately, I had a client, her daughter passed away from it because they couldn't find a match. Another biracial, and the daughter was black and white. The mom is white and the father's black. They couldn't find a match, and she passed away, unfortunately. So I take this very serious. People need to stop being ignorant and start reading more. Like, I don't know. The worst thing that I run into are ultra-crepidarians, right? People that act like they're experts, but in fact, they're the polar opposite. They try to speak on a topic that they have no education, no knowledge of, but they're acting like, that they're conversant on the topic. That is so cringy. It is so cringy. And also, what do you call those people? Those solipsistic people, right? They only want to see things their way. Very egocentric, right? It's all about how they see things. In spite of the evidence that's provided, they still refuse to see it. I cannot stand solipsistic, ultra-crepidarian, ipsidicistic, and mumpsimus type people. They drive me nuts. I stay far away from them because I already know the material that I'm dealing with, and that is not a compliment. All right, so this is the last slide. I didn't want to exclude multi-generational mixed race people, which can also include Creoles, everyone, because they're known to be multi-generational mix for several generations. But anyway, so Seal, he's an amazing singer. That's his ex-wife, the model, Heidi Klum. That is their daughter. And then on the far right at the bottom is her son. Now, I do believe there's another daughter, but if I were to guess like what their ethnicity was, I'm talking about the kids, I would say they were mixed race, but more on the grift side. So grift means that one parent's biracial, like mulatto, black and white, and other parent's black. So I would say the daughter looks a little bit more on the biracial side than the son because her hair is silky. When I looked at her hair texture is more of like a typical mixed race person, whereas her brother that's featured here is like my dad, more like 4C type hair. And even his facial features look more on the subsaharan side. Not 100% like the father, but more on that side, which is nothing wrong with that. Again, remember, mixed race, we pick up different traits from our parents, right? Now, if you were to look at the people at the top, those are the multi-generational mixed race people, also known as MGM. But Steph Curry, look at him and Aisha, both mixed race. Aisha, if I'm not mistaken, has two biracial parents, and Steph Curry has two multi-generational mixed race parents. They're all mixed race, just like Lenny Kravitz and what's her name? I can't think of it right now. But Lenny Kravitz and what was her name? He was married to her. She was on a Cosmic Show. I can't think of her right now. But they have a daughter, Zoe. They're both biracial, the parents, and Zoe is a second generation biracial. But anyway, so going back to the slide here, Vanessa Williams, that's her parents. Now, her father, as you can see, he was very mixed. He looked like he was definitely more on the white side, but I didn't see his ancestry DNA results, but he definitely was mixed race, and the mother also was mixed race, but I believe she was a multi-generational. But Vanessa Williams had her ancestry DNA results. Oh, Lisa Bonet, Lisa Bonet and Lenny Kravitz. They're both biracial. And her daughter, Zoe, is a second generation biracial. Okay, so going back to Vanessa Williams, she had her ancestry DNA test done, and she's like 44% European. So where do you think they came from? That means that both of her parents are mixed. I don't know why people cannot understand that basic concept. They're saying to me, oh, she's not mixed at all. She just has two light skin. What? I want you to listen to yourself. Why would you make an asinine comment like that? when in fact her DNA ancestry results show she's 44% European. So how is she not mixed? Duh. Like, people are just, oh my God, it's embarrassing. Like, that's just basic common sense, like basic reasoning. If she's 44% white, that means that both of her parents are mixed in this case. And yet people are still saying stupid stuff. Oh, she's not mixed. Oh my God. I just, it's so exhausting. Now, on the right at the top is Steph Curry and his parents and his siblings. Now, I don't see the mother there, but the mom, they're all mixed race. Again, multi-generational mix. So they're all mixed. His nuclear family and, well, I guess he well, his nuclear family and his married family. I'll say it that way. All mixed race. Okay? Same thing with Vanessa Williams. Rick Fox is biracial, and her first husband that she had kids with, all mixed race. They're all mixed race, every one of them. So there you go. Now I'm done. I hope you learned something, and I have lots of references in this presentation. There's no excuse why you didn't learn something. Have a blessed day.